Alright guys, here's a little bit of just a talking to the screen video about um, how to kind of be prepared for the new graphics card came out in January 2025. Um, the reason I'm going behind this is like I'm more into the budget friendly side of PC build, where I don't think anybody should be overspending on any particular component for the fact that you're gonna have the same performance as everybody else but pay less. Um, but everything aside, I mean, if you are into buying used parts, great, and you don't play with a lot of ray tracing games or any sort of DLSS enable games. Sure, and you just use pure rasterization. You could just buy a used you know graphics card and call it a day. But if you are into getting the newest thing, you're ready to start building a PC, I think you should be starting it now before the graphics card launch. With that said, it is always my best practice to build a PC, you know, within a reasonable time range where you don't buy a component, at beginning 2025 and then end up like upgrading it slowly. Sure, you might think you save money, but I think in terms like money per, I guess, fun, I suppose. I think you should be spending the money at the same time frame. What I mean by that is if you're ready to getting ready for the 50 series launch or the new AMD 9070 graphics cards, and you are planning to upgrade from one of your older computer, and you are very budget oriented PC builder, or at least PC enthusiast, you should be thinking about start looking at PC parts today, if not already back in 2024 during Black Friday. The reason behind this is the fact that you are always going to find better deals in like how do I say a longer time frame versus like within like a week or a couple of days. So here are my recommendations for if you're into getting the 5070, for example. It's rumored to have the 4090 performance, which is it's probably gonna have like a 4080 or ish, or 4070 Ti super performance ish with a lower price, which is going from this video. Right now the 5070 is quote unquote MSRP for 549, where today if you go look at the 4080 or the 4070 Ti Super, oh, look at that, they already have the 50 series in here already. But anyways, we're gonna go and look at two of ones you could buy today, right? And you're looking at, I don't know if these prices are bloated or not, but you're looking at $800, for these graphics cards. Where in a few weeks later, you're gonna save yourself $300. If you are able to buy one at MSRP, let's just say it's a little bit bloated. Let's say it's $549, for example, right? So if you add like say an extra $100, so it's $649. It's still cheaper than buying, the 4070 Ti Super or the 4080 Super, where it's just about $9, right? So here are my recommendation on PC part build where you should be focusing on, like today, where you can find the best deals today, even though it's after Black Friday, after Christmas holiday shopping season. So over here, I'm gonna put in I would suspect it will be around the 4080 performance from 5070 in terms of like rasterization. I'm not even mentioning like DLSS or any sort of frame generation stuff. We're gonna manually key in the price for, let's say, $659. I think that's a reasonable ballpark for a newly released 5070, right? So that is the first thing you want to look at, and what CPUs you can pair with it today. And to be honest, if you can find, like, I know a lot of people say, oh, it's no brainer to grab, the 9800X3D, but that's only if you can find it, right? So from here, it does say available soon, but if you can't find anything, I think the Intel platform would be a reasonable alternative, or a 7800 X3D if it's on sale. So to be honest, if you are kind of in a time crunch, or you bought everything and you're only missing is the CPU and the motherboard, then go ahead and buy whatever is available today. So I'm gonna filter it, just so you guys can see what sort of pricing that you'd be looking at buying these parts, and you could massage the specs a little bit later when you do find a better deal, right? Or even Raptor Lake. i9, i7. All right. I think I like, to be honest, I think the 9800 X3D, this particular chip, is actually not that budget oriented. Like, if it's for me to buy anything that's budget oriented, I would buy something under 350 or 300. So if you are looking into those type of, like, especially you're willing to spend the money for a 5070, you should be looking at something in the ballpark of that range. Like, for price anyways, for me, I always go for accessories and other things aside, the core component, you should be aiming 50% of your budget on a GPU, right? And the other 50% should be aiming towards your CPU and a motherboard combo. And when you are selecting CPU and motherboard combo, the best price to perform ratio to me is always, if you are spending, let's say, $300 on a CPU, and then you should be just spending $150 on a motherboard. Half the price of your CPU. Because if you're buying a motherboard that's the same price as your CPU, I think you're overspending on a motherboard. So put that aside. What I'm looking at, so let's just say you're we're gonna do a calculator here. Let's just say you're buying what, 650 worth of GPU, right? And you're looking at to buy, you know, a CPU motherboard combo. Well, your budget for those two are gonna be, you know, around 650. Let's just say 700 ballpark. So if I were spending $700, I would have spent probably around, let's say 250 on a motherboard plus maybe 400 on a CPU. So if that's the case, I would actually change the price marking a little bit so I can find something in that range that's reasonably performant and that, you know, it's not gonna hurt your bottom line, basically your budget, right? And obviously you could also go buy some of the Zen 4 stuff, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend those processors. I'm just curious to see if my filter here didn't include any of the ultra stuff. I think I'll just take out these and then I get more options. So Castle Lake, these are all old stuff. Skylake, maybe I should filter it. Where do I find that? Raptor Lake. These are the 1400 series. Rocket Lake. I mean, those are 11 series. Nope. Raptor Lake. All right. Gen 5. So, for me anyways, let's see if any of the ultra ones, let's filter backwards. I think that would give us more concise sort of filtering. So if you're looking at what, $400 budget, the Ultra 7 probably is your best bet. But then we know for a fact that these ultra CPUs are in question in terms like gaming, right? So we're gonna filter out oops, okay. So next thing we're looking at is the 1400 series. So where do we go now? Well, it's hard to remember which one's which, but Rocket Lake, Raptor Lake. So Rocket Lake is old. You don't need to. I think this will be your best bet for the 13 and 14 gen. So my mind is already kind of like set on the 14700K, because this one was only going for about $300 right now. And if you are able to, if you need a chip today, I think that's what would you want to buy, right? Now, AMD side of things, I'm gonna actually click that out. I'm gonna go for AM5. This is hard to. Maybe they should add a filter for dates. Like when is the processor released or something like that. They're kind of stuck buying these chips right now for the price. And if you expand it a little bit, you're gonna end up hitting the 9800 3D. Zen 4. You're gonna hit one of those. That's overpriced for that price. Me personally, if you're on a budget, you still want to play games, I don't think you should be spending the money on like these chips, and they're just too pricey for what it is. So I will go back and buy the Intel. Actually, I just reset the filter. I would go buy the 14700K because I think this is a way better deal, right? And for your motherboard, for example, depends on your need. Basically, if you're needing to buy an RTX, you're kind of stuck with paying for a premium, especially you're trying to run the 14700K. So some of these cheaper boards, it's not going to give you the performance level. But right now, if you look at these two Asus board for RTX build, right? I think they're in a reasonable price range. I think it should go lower. Like it'll be, I bought this one during Black Friday, which is in equivalent to USD about 150. I mean, you could buy that. This is a pretty good for RTX build. But if you're, if you don't care for RTX, you're care into like ATX, well, you're gonna have tons of choices. But remember how I said CPU should be the double price of your motherboard. So I would filter this be about like 170 range, and I will buy I won't say the best chipset, but I will buy a reasonable chipset to pair with it and reasonable enough features that you need. So I think for the 14700K in particular, if you filter by price, I would buy the little bit of the pricier end of some of these motherboards. This ASRock Z690 board that's pretty nice for $159, and yeah, I think go for that. These boards this board in particular is actually quite nice. The Steel Legend boards. Now, me personally, I think I would go for the ITX build just because I'm a ITX fanboy. But I'll just put that as a a price holder for this particular build. So between these two boards, to be honest, there's not that much of a difference other than just some of the feature sets. I'm pretty sure if you look into the Wi-Fi aspect of it, I think 6E is only available. Okay, yeah, they're both support 6E, so really I would have kind of any one of these, to be honest. like, yeah, any one of these would be suffice, but I would just pick that because that's the lowest price. For internal memory, to be honest, you don't need crazy speed. You just need to make sure you have something reasonable, and I would personally either get a 62 gig or 48, sorry, wrong one, that one, and then that one over here. I would actually filter by price per gigabyte, and I don't recommend to buy too low of a speed, or at least the latency, with a little bit better latency. So over here, the slider will give you something around, I say 10 would be quite reasonable to buy something with a good latency. And so price per gigabyte, if you buy this, that's double the price of that. And to be honest, most people don't need 64 unless you're really a Chrome tab browser guy that loves to open a whole bunch of tabs. But I think in terms like price wise, any of these three will work. And I am kind of a team group fanboy for their RAM anyways, so I would select this one. And for storage, you're gonna go into NVMe stuff, right? You want to collect that. I would say if you're able to find Gen 5 for a decent price, go for Gen 5. I would select these two. And then capacity wise, I wouldn't recommend to buy too small of a capacity. I would go for at least the 2 terabyte model. I'm gonna filter it down. Filter by price per gigabyte. And we're gonna end up having to see a lot of, no name or very, unknown branded stuff here and there. Like, what is this AGI? What is this Clef? And the MSI, this particular model doesn't have a DRAM cache, but I think for most people, it wouldn't matter. But I think if you are just into just a tiny bit of the more performance, you should filter down the price. Maybe give it about $120 ish, and then see what they got for the most expensive side of it. Does it give you the some of the Samsung or Western Digital alternatives, like good like these one? I don't think this one has DRAM cache. I don't think that has DRAM cache. So really, we're kind of stuck in a hard place where the two terabyte version doesn't really give you that many of option for DRAM cache drives. So if that's the case, I would actually just kind of see if any sort of Gen 5 would be available in this price, but no, you can only go for Gen 4. So if that's the case, I would buy, I would actually do some research on kind of what these SSDs are made of. What I mean by that, what sort of chip they're running, and sort of just run, like, see if you can Google any sort of reliability data. Because I think in terms of like performance, you're not gonna see that much of difference in the lots here. But there are, SSD or brands out there tends to have more reliability issues than the others, and I think between this, I'll pick something in the middle ground. So I would go for, a team group, but you do have to do some research on, their reliability. I think that's the key thing for me to buy storage is the reliability. I think I have this one. I know this one. It's it's okay. It's not the best SSD in the world, but I think this would be the best entry point mark. Would be sub $100. I wouldn't go too low, just because of the performance you're kind of leaving on the table just for a few dollars. So, or the team group T4s. I don't know. I don't know if I should recommend this blue drive, just because of its performance, but I would select something like if I would purchase, I would purchase something in this range, right? Because then that give you the best performance to the dollar and reliability to a dollar price point. So in term like this, I'll just get this for this for a price storage there. So the next thing I would do is once you pick out all your main components, the next thing you need to do is actually pick out the case before anything else, because the case you select would actually limit the options you get for CPU coolers and power supply, or even this graphics card might affect your ability of selecting cases. And sometimes you actually select the case you want first before you select everything else. So in this case, I already select everything else, and to be honest, I will buy Media RTX cases. A lot of micro ATX case would limit you to use a full size ATX power supply, and that they will actually take up quite a bit of space. And SFX power supply nowadays is not that expensive compared to an ATX. So I would just go filter out and buy your favorite RTX case. The Cooler Masters, they're not bad, but I'll buy the V2 version definitely if I were buying the Cooler Master one. I wouldn't buy the NR200 original model. The fractal cases, they're okay, but in terms this would be nice for a HTPC style build, but if you don't need it, then don't buy these. They'll have pretty bad cooler selection for your build. So I did a little build on the Lee & Lee A4 H2O. Nice little case, very small, but you're kind of limited to have a 240mm rad to be used in there. I'm pretty sure all of these are kind of the same sort of running the same type of issue, is the cooler selection. So if you aren't really wanting to buy like a 240mm rad for some reason, and you're not kind of size limited, because the NR200P V2 is quite big compared to the Lee & Lee A4 H2O, I would buy the NR200P. And you also have to think about your cooler selection. What I mean by that, because you already picked the 14700K, you're kind of restricting yourself selecting the cooler sizes. What I mean by that is you can't buy too small of a cooler because you're not able to cool that 14700K adequate. So if you are buying, let's say, the NR200P, for example, you'll need to get at least the dual tower 120 coolers, like the Peerless Assassin or like the D12 or D15 or something like that, from Noctua. So at this point, it's really about kind of what sort of, style you want to build, right? You have to do some research now. So since I have owned not the V2 version, but the NR200 version of it, I'm not a fan of how the power supply layout is in this case, because the power supply kind of limits a little bit of your graphics card space. So I'm just gonna go back to something I kind of enjoy to build in, which is this H2O. If you're able to splurge a little bit, Facto Terra, Design Terra is pretty nice too, but since I know this case, I'm gonna select that one. And then you can now go back and select your power supply and cooler selection. So coolers, Thermalright, hands down, but I wouldn't buy any of these ones. These are quite noisy, loud, and they're not that good in terms of like performance. But starting from this price point, any of the AIO, so let's say 240, basically just buy the cheapest 240. I would buy just for, a couple bucks more, I'll buy the Frozen Edge, just because the fan is a little bit cooler and quieter, I mean. And so power supply is your last. One thing about power supply is you do not want to buy a cheapo power supply. I'm not saying Thermaltake is a bad power supply company, but they do make a bad selection of power supplies. Cooler Masters is not afraid of this either, so they also have their bad power supplies. But I wouldn't buy, like, for that for the H2O. I do recommend to get the full size the XFX all power supply. Well, in this case, you can't even, they wouldn't give you that selection. But so in this case, we want to have the 12 volt power for the 12 volt high power for your graphics card. So you have to do this little bit of filter here and find out the ones that supports it. The next thing you want to do is you want to look at its wattage kind of output. I wouldn't say you need to have 1,000 watt power supply. I think 850 would be enough, but typically the 1,000 watt power supplies are just built a tiny bit better compared to the 850s, in terms like component selection and they just give you a little bit more headroom in case in the future that you will need to upgrade, right? So if you're into the budget selection, and I wouldn't recommend getting the SFX L power supply. In this case, I do see it as an L power supply because of the size of the fan. So this is a normal SFX. That's a normal SFX. That's an L, and that's an L, and that's a normal. So really, in terms like the pricing wise, you're only right now you're only limited to buy these two right now. Like these ones are not really available for that particular case, and I don't recommend for any SFX build to use SFX out because that just give you so little room to cable manage. So in this case, you know what? I'll buy this. I'll buy the Quartermaster. Do you need fans for that case? No, because really no place to put any fans. And right now, for about $1,700, you should be able to build a decently matched like a 5070 computer. I think you should I think if you're able to massage any of some of these components here and there, you could probably get down to maybe 150, but that's pushing it, because then you're losing, and then you're gonna run into possibly like CPU bottlenecks or any sort of bottlenecks here and there. Maybe you opt in to get the 16 gig memory, and I don't recommend to get 16. It's just not, like, for 25 to 25 you can't use 16 anymore. You can't get away with that. You can definitely go down to the 1 terabyte drive that probably cuts down to like $60, right? But then you're also running into like where you're gonna store all your games, and especially for an SFX build, unless you have a secondary SSD you're willing to already part into, then sure, pop in that in. But I think this is where you're kind of sitting at for 25. I wouldn't say a budget build, but sensible, build that it's gonna be good for the next 5 years of gaming. I'll copy this, and I'll post it as part of this video so you guys can go in there and take a look of the part selection. But I hope you guys enjoy this little bit of talking screen video, and we'll see you next time.